So hello and welcome to the Serra Football Podcast. My name is Amy Strain and I am Serra's Director of Marketing and Communication. And once again, I am joined by Serra's varsity head coach, Patrick Walsh. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome.
Glad to be here.
I know, it's going to be fun. So
I'm glad you dropped the traditional adjectives too. Thank you.
Well,
I like that. It's better.
Well, I have a lot, but I was just going to wait, kind of set the tone a little bit.
Well,
I might get into it. We'll see. I said bearded last time, so.
Well, because I was. They got razors for things like that.
Exactly. Well, good. Well, here we are today on August 25th, and we're on the eve of our season opener against the Folsom High School Bulldogs. Super exciting time. There's a buzz on campus. We have a pretty insane preseason lineup with some of the best teams in the state, definitely Northern California, right?
Yep.
We've got Folsom, De La Salle, and Central Catholic, and all within a 3-week period. Can you talk a little bit about our preseason lineup?
Sure. The general response I get from people is, you need to fire the guy who makes that schedule. What's the matter with that guy? And I'm sitting around going, well, I'm the one.
That's me.
That's me. I'm responsible for that. I guess I could fire myself at any point, but yeah, there's a lot that goes into scheduling. There's the reality of people who want to play or can play or that we have a pool from. We don't have a big pool of people that are lining up to play us, and I understand that because there's programs are in different levels of where they are in their maturation process, and I think for us, playing these programs that are perennial state champions, section champions, I think that's going to be more the norm now. And this isn't the first time we haven't had a CCS opponent in the preseason. We like to have CCS opponents and, stay a little bit closer without driving everywhere. But it's great. It worked out great. And, for me, it was particularly after last year's experience with Mater Dei and getting in the open division. And I think this is good for us in the sense that we'll know right away where we are in the realm of the entire state of California, which isn't the priority, because really for me, the priority is figuring out exactly who we are prior to playing in WCAL. And Folsom, De La Salle, and Central Catholic will do that for us.
Definitely. I mean, it's extremely challenging, and these teams have also, like you said, I mean, they've held some big titles as well and had some big games. So, there's just a hunger in all directions that particularly after last year, right? That
sure.
I think we're a little targeted, Serra High School a little bit, maybe.
Sure.
Open division, right? Going up against that game. But can you talk a little bit about how you arrange the preseason? Like, I mean, does a coach just call you from Folsom and say, hey, let's play? Or is there some logistics behind it?
Yeah, and it could go in either direction. I think, Folsom High School and De La Salle are also next level flag football programs.
Oh, cool.
And I'm very tight with Paul Doherty and Justin Peterson, who helps run the site up there at Folsom. So just through conversation and how things stacked up with their schedule, and I think they have similar challenges in getting games. It was like, I don't know if we reluctantly did it because, it's one thing to play a preseason schedule, but also know that, we don't know if we're going to win or lose any of these games. Right. Which to me is healthy. But other people have different scheduling, philosophies. For us, it's okay. I mean, for us, the crown jewel is the WCAL. Right. And I'm not saying we're soft and we don't want to win tomorrow night, and that's definitely not who we are. But really, I've learned so much here in the 22 years I've been the head coach, or 21 now, going into 22. The WCAL it matters. And the 3 preseason games should prep us as best it can for those 7 games. That's awesome. That's what I was going to. Yeah, that's kind of my strategy. I was going to say that. I mean, really, it's not a win or lose situation. I mean, certainly you always want to win, but I mean, it's definitely about learning. I mean, all these people, this new team has not worked together in a game day situation yet. Right. So there's a lot of the learning curve. I'm sure is really steep. And will be really, really helpful. So on that note too, like my wife's like, oh, are you nervous? We got a game tomorrow, and I really thought about that, and I'm not. And really, I'm not nervous about anything ever in the preseason. But I'm nervous for every single WCL game. Yes, that's when the battle starts. I don't know if I guess it's the way the relative weight and importance of it has gone through, the 2 decades I've been here. And I'm excited, and I'm thrilled, and I can't wait. High school football's back. It's great. We're playing an awesome environment. Against Coach Doherty and his Bulldogs. Like, that's awesome. I'm excited. But there's a current of anxiety that isn't there in the preseason, that is 100% there when we play any team.
Any team, yep. Yeah. Starting with St. Francis. Well, we're going to get to talking about the specifics of the Bulldogs in a little bit here, but for some of the new families, I wanted to, we do have a young team. We have a lot of new juniors, sophomores, and I just wanted to talk a little bit about the pillars of your program. It's so special and unique to Serra and to football in general, and I just wanted to hear it directly from you, if we could just briefly go over that.
Yeah, I mean, our core values are love, brotherhood, and humility. And we have what we call the path of the spiritual warrior, which begins with faith. So this is a perfect week to focus on faith, because we have no idea where the season's going to end up. We have no idea this game's going to end up, and frankly, we don't know how this moment is going to end up.
Right.
And understanding that we're living a faithful journey and a faithful program with faithful individuals who believe in a common purpose and a common cause, hopefully will lead to those outcomes when there's a lot of other steps in between. But if we can get to a point where we can truly love each other and truly have a family and a community and have humility in our way going about doing it, then I believe we've achieved what we need to achieve as a program and turning over kids to the next generation. And if they operate from a different platform of humility, and which is hard these days with social media and look at me and popping the collar and
a winning season, and coming off a winning season too.
Coming off a winning season, I mean, it's different and difficult, but that's the way it is. I mean, there's different challenges for every generation, and these kids have to deal with that. And social media is something that they have to manage, and ego is something that we've always had to manage ego as humans,
with or without social media.
With or without social media. Like you could look at some of the Romans said, like, okay, that Caesar had a bit of an ego issue, but so it's always been a challenge for humanity. But for us, it's just in your face every moment. Like, how many stars do I have? Who am I getting recruited by? Like, none of that really matters when it comes to love, brotherhood, and humility. And if I think we reverse engineer how we think about things and get to those points and get the challenges up and down along the way, then the outcomes will handle themselves on the scoreboard. That's what we're all about.
Definitely. And now we're entering your 22nd season. That's correct, right?
Yeah.
So I imagine that the love, brotherhood, humility that you've employed every year for over 2 decades, I'm sure you have to weigh heavily on one more than the other with the different teams. Do you find that that's something that you have to kind of, okay, the brotherhood isn't there, or the, humility? I mean, it's...
Yeah, I think they're one. They become one. And if we're truly operating in that consciousness level, then there isn't a difference. It all kind of flows together as one thing. And when we reach that point, which is hard, and some teams and individuals never get there, and that's okay, but the journey is what it's all about. So, realistically, every team is different. And what, to your point, I wouldn't say I focus any one thing, or our coaching staff focus on any one thing or the other. We just know that there's this kind of mystical feeling that we're trying to get to. And the seniors in our opening chapel last week talked about their why. Like, why do they play Serra football? And a lot of them talked about just that feeling of really truly being connected with another human being and being connected with their brothers, and talking about freshman football. Like, I remember when I walked in, 4 years ago as a gangly freshman, I didn't know anyone, and now we're together. Like, those sort of things really resonate and really matter. And that's where it's like, okay, maybe we can get to that point too. And I think life's most valuable things aren't tangible, really. I think it's more of a feeling. It's like, hey, I got this gold plate over here. It's awesome. It's worth this. It's like, there's really not much in that gold plate but money. So for us, we're after something a lot deeper, that it can be brought out in many different ways. And that's why I think Folsom and De La Salle and Central Catholic are on the schedule to help us accelerate that journey, plus or minus, good or bad, scoreboard.
Sure.
It's for us, we're trying to get to a deeper place where there's, 10, 9 Serra guys standing in someone's wedding photo.
Yes.
And if we can do that, then that's a good thing.
Kind of expedites the unity, right? Like, whatever emotion comes out of, whatever the outcome of each of these games are, how you deal with it as a family and as a tight-knit team is kind of what helps you to form for the next one, right?
So I think the preseason is what I would call like a fantasy land. And everyone has their hopes and dreams and visions and thought concepts and just desires and that sort of stuff. Well, when the ball's kicked off tomorrow night at 7, we are going to enter what I would call the reality world. So everything that happens preseason, like right now there's 32 NFL fan bases that have living in fantasy thinking their team can win a Super Bowl. Well, in the reality, there's only going to be one.
Right.
So along the way, there's going to be a journey and things that happen in there. And I think the fantasy land is the ego. And in that fantasy land, your ego is pulling at it. Like, I'm going to play every down. I'm going to score 800 touchdowns. We're going to win the state championship, and we're going to go undefeated. And there's all these things like, I'm never going to get injured. I'm never going to have to deal with any opposition. So that's fantasy. For us, and knowing we've done this for so many years and watching football long enough to know, that's not reality. And if reality is okay, and reality is where we can accept reality, then we can deal with a difficult football season. And I think that's the strength in football teams' life as we go through it. You know, we've dealt with this in the 2 previous podcasts before, like, you know, and if we can get to a point where things aren't happening to us, but happening for us, and we can operate from a place where we feel like these are just opportunities, even though they're painful, to learn, and then I think we can grow. And if we can grow, then we can maybe get to a spiritual place where we are operating in a deeper level of love for one another. And if reality is perfect, because reality doesn't really care about fantasy. It doesn't care. It's very strong force, right? And if we can operate in reality and understand that, oh my gosh, I can't believe we lost that game. Well, the reality of it is we did, and it's okay. So what did we learn?
Right.
And I think
takeaways. That's
the beautiful thing about the first game. We're finally slammed in reality. Like, okay, this guy's going to play here. This guy's going to play here. This guy's going to play here. It's so great. This is what's going to happen. It doesn't work that way.
All starts with that first hit, right?
It really does. Like Mike Tyson said, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face.
Love it. That's going to be a lot of people tomorrow.
Yeah, that's another way of saying what I just said. Yeah.
I love it. Yeah. Well, I think yours is it's much nicer. So.
Oh, thank you.
And speaking of let's talk about this varsity team. We lost a lot of senior leaders last year, so we have a young team, but an enormous skill set. I mean, our players are incredible. Can you just talk a little bit about the team? What are we up against? What are some of our challenges? What are our strengths? I know there's a few.
Right. So in my fantasy world, because I can't tell you anything based in reality because we haven't done anything, but it would seem that the strength of our team right now coming back would be our defensive personnel, our defensive experience. And largely, a lot of those guys are 3-year juniors. So Colin Tautia, Joseph Bay, Danny Niu, Jabari Mann, they all have been with us since freshman year.
And actively starting and playing.
Correct. Yeah. And it was a truncated season, of course, but then, you know, they all played a ton last year. Most of them started, you know, Colin played a bunch, and then now he's a starter. And so those guys are the strength of our returning defense in terms of experience, but they're only juniors, which is great. I mean, we got them for another couple of years. So, you know, and then we have some guys that have really stepped up in the off season, like Sam, what I call Sam Goligoski. He's, you know, really
25, right? Did he keep his number or did he change?
I know these guys change their numbers.
Yeah, I'll have to. We'll get the numbers right for the next podcast after Folsom.
Yeah, it will not say oligarchy on the back of his jersey.
You won't see anything tomorrow night.
That's true. That's
except
true.
the number.
That's right. So he's done a great job. You know, Alex Atkins played a lot at corner last year. Great. He's back. He's a senior. Awesome to have his leadership. And obviously we're playing just an amazing passing team. So, you know, he has a ton of experience, started in the championship game against Mater Dei. A lot of these guys played in this championship game. So I would say overall the strength of the team would be, at least coming back, would be our defense. We have some amazing skill players coming back on offense as well with Seamus Gilmartin.
Right. Villaroman.
Yep. Joey Villaroman will be back and ready to roll. Jay Webb.
I was going to say that.
Jay Webb is back. Jabari Mann and you know, Lucas Schumacher, and we have a depth of running backs who are going to share the load. And you know, we have 3 quarterbacks right now that are we have the deepest quarterback group we've had. And really,
that's
you know,
great, actually.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, there's been times where you just say a prayer like, please don't let one guy get hurt.
I know.
I don't know what we're going to do.
You have had experience with that with the 2020 team, remember?
Yeah.
That was like the big
yes
quarterback you know, he kept getting injured, right? Or not kept, but he came
Yes.
back and then, you know, with the collarbone.
Sure. You mean, well, you're talking 2019. That
19,
was,
sorry.
That was with Dalen McLemore.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right. Sorry.
Yeah, and you're like, oh, we're
Wrong
going
year.
wrong.
They all kind of blend. But
we're living in a dream world. We really were. We were actually living in fantasy and in reality when Dalen was playing. I mean, it was unbelievable the season we were having offensively. You know, 40, 50 points a game, just like, oh my gosh, this is unbelievable. And Nate Sanchez and all these guys we had, and then boom, and then we won 10-0, then we lost 14-13.
Right.
So I don't want to get down the rabbit hole, but you know,
it was pretty incredible.
Yeah, it was incredible that we continued. That team continued on losing a starting quarterback and made it to the state championship game. And I've, you know, just as we get started on the football season, I have always said this: you have to get lucky in two major areas to win the whole thing, and that's in injuries and penalties.
Right.
And
said that before, yeah.
You know, you talked to the New Orleans Saints about that, like their fan base, they didn't get lucky in penalties, and it should have been a PI. It wasn't. They didn't go to the Super Bowl, all that sort of stuff. And the subjective penalties, I'm not talking about false starting and punching a guy or stupid things that you can eliminate. I'm talking about just subjective calls by a referee that could go in or out of your favor. There's all sorts of history about that. And then injuries, you know, we're cruising along, probably potential WCAL player of the year in Dalen McLemore. And, well, dang, first quarter, all we talked about was keeping our guys healthy. We were playing a team that we probably should have won. You know, I don't know. There's a lot of things.
I mean, it happened even beginning of last season with, you know, Hassan.
Oh, my gosh,
So,
yeah.
I mean, it just...
Yeah, I mean, and that's where we don't know what we're going to be up against, but we know that we have to look at these as opportunities. We have to think about not what fate and events are happening to us, but happening for us.
Right.
And it's hard to look that way at any challenge in our lives. And it's hard as well as, you know, being a high school football player and coach. It's tough.
Well, and ultimately it's how you react to it, right? And that's, I think,
Yeah.
where you guys come in and, you know, your amazing coaching staff that, you know,
Exactly.
really know how to, you know, help the processing of some of the fateful events, if you will, right?
Yes.
So.
Yeah, I mean, we're certainly a different team with Hassan Mahassan, and, you know, last year, and he's 4 or 5 touchdowns a game, and that's 28, 35 points a game. That's just like, where do we find that?
Right.
And then so now the defense has to step up, or someone like Jay Weber stepped in and filled that role like magnificently for Hassan last year. And then, you know, Joey went down, and then McGovern came in, and he did a fantastic job and made great plays in the playoffs. And so this is
people step up, that's for sure.
The best team sport ever.
Yeah,
it really is. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, are there any new players you want to mention that have come over?
I think we'll let the film do that.
That's fine.
We talked about it. Well, they're not new, but you know, we have some young sophomores that are going to be playing.
That's
we
great.
have, you know, so I think we have some depth. The one thing that I failed to mention, and a lot of football people watch this, is, you know, the biggest question mark is we lost 4 of our 5 offensive linemen last year.
Right.
And 2 of them went Division I, one to San Diego State with Azzo, and Nate Elu's up at, you know, playing Pac-12 football at Oregon State, and you know, we had Silver there. We had some great players, and we were replacing those, and that's reality.
Right.
So
right.
we're going to find out.
The O-line's always, you know, the
Right.
key to success, right? So
I think for me, if you're like, okay, wipe everything off the board, you know, where do you start? Well, first of all, you start with quarterback. Like if you have a returning quarterback, oh, that's great. If you could have a returning quarterback like Tom Brady in New England every year, you're like, okay, we're going to be pretty good there.
Right.
And then I think secondly, for me, I would say O-line, because there's so much control of the game you have if you're controlling the line of scrimmage on the offensive line. It could be your best defense. You can go for it on 4th down. I mean, there's so many advantages to having an experienced, you know, butt-kicking offensive line.
Consistent, right.
We may get there. I'm hopeful, and we're working hard. We could get there. We have some good talent that's filling in the back end of what we lost last year. But I would say that's number one on my concern list right now. I'm just being honest, and I think we have some overachieving going on, which is awesome from a senior, Ryan Mokel. He's doing a great job. I remember him playing freshman year with Willie and all the guys, And it's like, wow, he's a tough guy. He's got good technique. Let's go. We got, so these are the things that are exciting.
That's great.
I am in my 22nd year, but the humans change every year. So the schedule changes, and that's what keeps high school football fun.
That's awesome. Well, good. It's going to be exciting to watch. And has the team gelled, though? I mean, let's talk about leadership. Let's talk about just team spirit.
Yeah, I would say there's been a good workman's-like attitude with this team. There hasn't been a lot of stop fooling around, stop this or that, or guidance on motivation. I would say that their desire to learn, their desire to show up and work while not perfect has been high. And I think that's good. It's a good starting point. In terms of gelling, I'll let you know.
See tomorrow,
15 I mean, it's
I know it's game day is what really
look at last
counts.
year. I would say our team didn't gel until we lost. We got
was the
smashed
Bellarmine
by,
game.
No. Well, yes.
They came together. But
Correct.
yeah, you're right. We had to come off some pretty ugly ones.
Well, that's, we were living in fantasy land. We're 9-0. We're going to dominate. It's the best team ever. And then maybe not. St. Francis had other plans.
They did.
And that was the beginning of that gelling process for that team. Was that pit that, we got tossed in that dark pit. And we had a chance, a lot of teams, I think, a lot of programs would have mailed it in and been like, we're done. And that group of kids and that coaching staff said, well, if we're going to go out, let's go out at least being different.
Right.
And we saw that, the 12th week of the season or 11th. I mean, that's kind of late. So, and
you were worried about that the whole time. I mean, that was something you mentioned every podcast. It was something that I know you mentioned to the players every practice. So I think, that was... Yeah, and look what happened.
It'll be like a parent, don't stick your hand in the socket. Don't stick your hand in the socket. Don't stick your hand in the socket. Okay, that's why I said don't stick your hand in the socket. Now you won't do it anymore.
Exactly. Takes that many times.
The electrical buzz was, juju, Tao just pouring it down the hill. I have PTSD from that day.
Oh my goodness! All right, well, let's talk a little bit about. I know that you announce your captain soon, and I think you're going to do that. You said tonight at chapel.
Yeah, our tradition is to do it the day before the game at our chapel. So
awesome.
Our process is the team votes on it, and then if there's 2 guys that stand out, or 5 or 7 or 9, I don't really have a number. Some people have a number. This year we have 5, and I'll talk about it at the next podcast because I haven't announced it yet. But
congratulations to those that are going to be the captains. That's it's a huge honor and privilege. Talk a little bit about chapel really quickly for those that might not know how integral the chapel is before a game.
Chapel is the most important thing we do at Serra. And for other coaches that are listening, I would say it doesn't have to be chapel. It can be a classroom. It can be anything. At the end of the day, the most important thing we do is our weekly chapel before the game. We've already had 2. We had a senior chapel and then an introductory chapel last week where we basically practice chapel, talk about chapel, and there's certain parameters that we have for our chapel service. And I assign 8 to 9 kids. I take the season, break it up, into 7, 8, 9 kids a week, depending on the roster size, and they're responsible for the chapel. And Father Joe, obviously our angel,
right? Class
amazing,
of '73,
which is amazing. We went to his play, and there were books about this guy, and they're making plays about this guy. So
amazing.
So he'll be there. He leads the chapel, and everyone just kind of takes a deep breath and gets into a different mind frame, and we can get away from whatever the pain and suffering and stress and anxiety that are happening in any of our lives at that point, coaches included, can go to the safe place and understand that we're together. And no matter what's happening in our lives at that time, we know that when we walk through those doors, we have a community around us that are suffering and going through the same things. Growing up is hard. Growing up is painful. And it's a big, challenging time in teenagers' lives. And I would say it's tough for adults.
Right, absolutely.
We're always growing up.
Sure.
And dealing with the realities of growing up is hard. Chapel helps us deal with that. And sometimes chapel is a football chapel, and sometimes football becomes a life chapel. And it just, the spirit of the game or the season or whatever, and the kids, they drive us there. And there's been some chapels that are like, let's go practice. This is not great. And there's other chapels that end in tears. And it's just when I think back to Serra High School, I'll remember some of the games, and we've talked about this before. I usually remember the losses we just talked about.
Right.
I know, it's a weird thing. Maybe I'm hopeful when I retire I think about the wins, but I'll definitely remember the chapels.
Definitely. Well, I think it's great that, and I've said this a million times, that you encourage your players to identify and kind of unite through their vulnerabilities. I mean, that's kind of how we all, accept and love and respond to one another. So I think it's a really wonderful thing, especially with such a hardcore sport like football, to have that soft side is huge. And I think it's actually the recipe for your success in your program. We talked a little bit about WCAL, but can you just, I mean, again, it's one of the most brutal leagues. Can you just talk a little bit about that for those that might not know what the WCAL is about?
So the West Catholic Athletic League is 8 schools, and we play in multiple sports here at Serra. I think we have 14 or 15 sports. It's been around for a long, long time. I think the SI Sacred Heart game is the longest running rivalry for west of the Mississippi or something like that.
Crazy, yeah.
Bellarmine and St. Francis, and there's all these great rivalries in all the sports, and we got our city teams. We're kind of in the middle, St. Francis and Mountain View, and then our San Jose teams. And these are 8 or 7 of my friends.
364 days
364
a year.
friends. I love them, and we all aspire to hoist that banner and call ourselves WCL champions. And it's a really, really great league, full of great men. They're all faith-based schools, which is amazing. So there isn't a lot of chicanery during games. I mean, we're competitive, and there might be some things, but really there's always this mutual level of respect, and rivalries can cross the lines at times, but I've never really felt that. So being involved in a league of this caliber, with this caliber of men who are coaching, and the families that choose to go to these schools has been a real pleasure. And it's really kept me around for a long time, because you drop your guard in this league, it's a wrap. Totally. You're going to be in a dogfight, or you're going to lose a game probably shouldn't have lost, and which we can learn from. But the lessons are much more painful in the WCAL when you're losing those games.
Yep.
So
much tradition too.
Much tradition, and we kind of sit in the middle. So there's kids that come from San Mateo, there's kids that come from the North County, and there's kids that come from the South County. And I've learned over the years, like if you're from more North County, you're like, oh, this SI game's gonna be Sacred Heart. I know everybody at Reardon. And if you live down south or something, it's like St. Francis. I know all the guys at Bellarmine and Mitty. So it's in Valley. So it's kind of depending on where you live. And I think because we're in the middle, I don't think anybody likes us, because we're in the middle. It's like nobody likes Sarah. Exactly. I don't know. So I think there's a certain magic and beauty about coaching in the WCL. There's only 8 of us, and it's the highest level of competition week in and week out, arguably, in Northern California. The league, actually, Folsom's league is fantastic. They play some great football, and in the East Bay, there's some great football. But year in and year out, I'd put the WCL up against any other league in the WCAL. I'm sorry, in Northern California. In
Northern California, awesome. Yeah. Well, you mentioned Folsom, and I think that's kind of the next on the radar here. So let's talk a little bit about Folsom as a team, as a program. I know that they beat Monterey Trail from Elk Grove with a final score of 47-18 last week. Yeah. And you said you've watched film on that. Can you just kind of bring us up to speed on anything you know about the program and just who we're up against? Yeah,
I mean, traditionally, Folsom has been the best team in a great league up there in the last 20 years. And or longer, and I apologize to Folsom fans if I'm insulted them, but recently, and just they're perennial champs. They've done an amazing job. Rockland beat them last year. I got friends at Rockland, and we got friends at Oak Ridge, and there's a lot of great teams up there. Awesome teams.
Oh yeah.
Granite Bay, and they've had a great run. I know the coaches over there. But Folsom, I think, has been the standard for that league for many, many years. And last year they beat De La Salle in a regional championship game it was the last play of the game, and there was a 2-point conversion. It was thrilling. And they represented Division I down in Southern California. So that's what we're up against. And there's a lot of returners off that team. Sadly, their tight end is a really, really, really special player, and I heard a special human. Got injured last week against Monterey. Yeah, it's terrible. It's a Hassan type thing.
Totally.
Way too early. Never want to see that from anybody.
Stanford-bound kid. I mean, just I heard great things.
Right, just like then I think he had offers from Alabama and everywhere, and he's going to it's hard to say. Even Alabama loses to Stanford in recruiting. It's really hard to say no to Stanford.
I know.
They have a great tagline. You're not making a 4-year decision. You're making a 40-year decision. And
it's a really good tagline.
A grave type decision. Like, you went to Stanford. Like, there's only a few.
Right. Not many can say that.
Maybe that's why there's not a ton of fans in the stands and have a lot of alumni. They're just out doing other things. And but you know, so that is one reality of the football season. I know I talked to Coach Doherty, and they're going through that. That's a very difficult thing to go through, particularly with an awesome human being like that. But they still have a ton of talent, and they have other tight ends that are fantastic, that have Division I offers. They have Rico Flores, who's a nationally prominent wide receiver, who's you know, by all accounts, one of the best receivers in California. Yikes. He's out there, and Austin Max, their quarterback, who got time last year. They had a championship caliber quarterback, senior. He got injured. Austin Mack got in there, you know, got a bunch of playing time, so he has experience, and you know, he looked great in the game last week. And this is what I see on film is a group that cares, and a group that loves being Folsom Bulldogs. And it's always great, and it's always a challenge to know that we're going up against a team that potentially loves each other as much as we do,
right? And
loves Folsom football as much as our guys love Serra football. And that's one of the reasons why we chose to play a school like this. Like, we have similar values when it comes to competing and playing football. And again, Coach Doherty is a dear friend of mine. He's an awesome human being. You know, he's got young kids that play in our next level league. And
so cool.
We talked for 30 minutes about high school football yesterday, I think. And like, wait a sec, I called you to talk about next level. Like, he had to get his kids in the league, whatever. So I just, the tightness and the closeness of the programs and the traditions of them is going to make for probably the game of the week in Northern California. Awesome.
Well, I know a lot of people are heading up there. I think before you just said it, that their field is blue, right? Didn't you say? So we're going to have a sea of blue as well. I hope a lot of fans get out there, and I guess the weather's predicted to be in like the low 90s, high 80s, which is better than like 2 weeks ago when we were predicting 106.
Well, yeah, I looked at the thing, and I just kept showing the kids 106 in Folsom, 106 in Folsom. We don't even know what 106 is. It's
I
like,
know.
It's the Mojave Desert.
Exactly.
Like, we don't get that, and I can see the fog through that window. It just chills there, and we have that soft ocean
we get a little breeze.
I know. So that will be, you know, regardless, it's going to be hotter than what we're used to here, and it's a challenge for us. We've talked about it. But, you know, talking about playing in heat is a lot different than playing in heat.
With pads on.
With
you know,
pads
like
on.
full pads, helmet. And
the stress of it all. It's harder to breathe in warm weather environments. It's just harder. And then the anxiety and the stress tightens up the chest and the football pads, and it's real. Like it's, wait a sec, did I even run the track test this year? Did I condition at all? And all of that stuff is going to be, you know, what we're going to have to manage.
Yeah, it all comes together. And I mean, that's like you said, that's why you do the preseason, is because you get ready for the big day, right? Yeah. All right. Well, game begins at 7 p.m. Tomorrow night at Folsom High School. It's going to be a great showcase of some of the best talent in Northern California. We hope to see all of you fans out there. And Patrick, thank you so much for your time, Coach. Is there anything else you want to say?
No, just go Padres, and I'm excited for another year of high school football. It's great to be with humans. It's great to be together. It's great to you know, share all the things that is necessary to be human and not do it in weird environments. So, you know, I still have PTSD from 2020 and 2021. I'm not kidding. Like, I'm very fortunate and grateful that these kids can bond the way they should have been, and the way that they're going to, and the way that that we expect it to be with humans. And I'm very thrilled to be living in that reality on a daily basis. Very grateful. Well, you played a pivotal role in that happening, so we thank you for that. We thank you for your time, and just for those listeners, we will be doing this weekly before games. Sometimes we'll have post games when we can, but stay tuned to hear the great words from Coach Walsh. So go Padres. Go Padres. All right, thank you. Thank you.